Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. His Excellency, ably represented by the Commissioner of Higher Education, the Speaker, ably represented by his deputy, Mai Martaba Sarki, ably represented by the Katikan Kano, Mr. Chairman, all other protocols duly and respectively observed. Now, when the chairperson of this occasion sent me a text that I should talk on good governance, and that the theme of the conference is good governance. So I thought it is a very, very wide area, Mr. Chairman. And for me, I try to navigate into the topic by focusing specifically on Nigeria. Even though it is here that I learned that I'm supposed to speak on the other perspective, okay, or the conventional perspective. So I coined a topic. So in order to navigate within the but sea of the theme, I just call a topic as this: good governance in Nigeria, myths and realities. So in order to address this topic, Mr. Chairman, what I did is to try to look at three basic questions so that we can be in tune with the issue. I started by saying that the issue of good governance has become prominent in the 1990s due to the so-called third wave of democratization that swept the continent of Africa and other developing countries. Okay? The feeling is that good governance is the surest way of democratic consideration, and as well as efficient and effective service delivery. So based on this, I said my presentation will try to answer three basic questions, like I said. First, what is good governance? Second, how is Nigeria doing on good governance? And thirdly, what is to be done? If the second question is either positive or negative, whichever way the discussion goes, we have to do something. If it is, we are not doing well on that, then how do we improve good governance in Nigeria? If we are doing well on it, how do we sustain good governance in Nigeria? So in whichever way, the how is an important factor. Now, you see, Professor Saluhu has touched on what I intended to do on the conventional meaning. I said that even though now good governance has become a common theme, a household word, okay, there is no consensus on a single definition of what good governance is. That is a single one that is acceptable by, or accepted by everybody. So I said, if we look at it, for example, we see at least three different perspectives from the conventional side. Already, Professor has given us the first convention, which I don't have to talk about. One convention, one perspective is that it sees good governance as an ideal. That is a goal which states aspire to achieve, okay? Another perspective, look at good governance as a process. That is the process of creating a responsive and responsible government. And then the third one is a perspective that look at good governance as a system. That is a system of government, okay? Now, I argue that regardless of the perspective that one looks at it, whether in either of these conventional way, good governance has to do with how public institutions and officials conduct public affairs and manage public resources. In other words, the way they conduct, I think the chairman has touched on this, good government is about conducting public affairs and managing public resources. And the previous speaker said, and I agreed with him, that there are 8 basic principles or tenets of good governance from the conventional perspective. So I don't want to go over them. Let me just say, one is participatory, that it is a process in which popular sovereignty and equality of opportunity for the citizens to display and participate in the political process. The second thing, there is the issue of effective and efficient management of resources. That is prudent management and the judicious use of national resources in the interest of the generality rather than the interest of few individuals or for private and personal ends. Where public resources are converted for personal use or are cornered for personal use, there is no element of good governance. The third element is inclusiveness. That is existence of credible opposition as well as tolerance and accommodation and respect of minority or dissenting views. Okay? Because in any society, we are bound to find people with different views. So as part of good governance process, you tolerate and accept those dissenting views in as much as they are constructive, they are not destructive. We are not saying you take destructive views, but those that are constructive, you take them in order to move forward. And number 5 is the issue of rule of law. That is supremacy of the law of the land. And I'm just touching them quickly. Number 6 is if we keep this 8th element, but this is where my question is, how far has Nigeria gone, or how can we rate Nigeria on these 8 indices over, at least let's focus on the last 24 years of continuous and uninterrupted democratic rule in Nigeria? Okay? I say that it is just barely 2 months when we celebrate the 24th anniversary of continuous democratic rule in Nigeria. But unfortunately, okay, despite all the efforts and the painstaking measures that were taken and are still taken in order to make sure that we have good governance, we read the previous, the current dispensation from the evils that led to the collapse of the previous regime. I think the reality is that Nigeria's governance or democratic rule is yet to translate into good governance as described by the 8 indices that I mentioned. Now, let's take it. On the contrary, Nigeria and Nigerians are bedeviled by the problem of bad governance, which is characterized by corruption, maladministration, abuse of office, authoritarian tendencies, violence, vicariance, and conflict in the state and national assemblies, feud between the legislature and the executive, and so many things, okay? Now, if we take these indices one by one, okay, we'll see that Nigeria is terribly lacking or dragging behind on these 8 issues. Now, let's take, for example, the issue of participation inclusiveness, and consensus or, orientation. Now, if we consider these three elements together, we see that Nigeria, or the 24 years of democracy, is glaringly deficient in this element. For example, the common man now is not only relegated to the role of a mere voter, okay, but is constantly cajoled, harassed, and abused by the state that is so monstrous, alien to the person. In other words, the ordinary person, the common man, has lost touch with the state. Like what the professor said earlier on, is that we live in two worlds, okay? The common man feels that the government and the leaders are alien to him because they don't take care of his own interests. Secondly, the public is rarely consulted by policymakers on major policy issues. Okay? Now, for example, we are just witnessing what is happening about the regulation. Okay? In a truly democratic government, and where there is good governance, at least the leaders should contact and appeal the, test and hear the feelings and opinions of the people. But what happened is that the very day that we are welcoming new leadership, they start at us at pace and say that the regulation, subsidy is gone. Okay? And this is kind of militaristic approach instead of consensus building, instead of inclusiveness, instead of participation of the electorate into the election, decision-making process. And if you also look at Nigeria, you go back in the last 63 years, I say except for once, we have never had referendum where the people's view are heard. It is only, or it was only in 1963, I guess, when we had the referendum about whether part of Cameroon should join Nigeria or not. But other than that, everything is just like a decree, it's just like a fiat. The leaders will make decisions, and then it is only for us to abide by those decisions. Now, let's take the other element, which is accountability. You see, by the 1999 Constitution, accountability of leaders, leaders must be accountable to the people they govern. This is what the Constitution provides. But in reality, okay, this principle is mere window dressing. Because the issue of accountability, for example, in order to emphasize accountability, the Constitution upholds the sanctity of periodic elections. Okay? The argument is that it is only when leaders are subjected to election, and when they know they will account to the electorate at the polls, that is when the leaders will perform creditably well in order to get the support of or aspiration or the support of the electorate. Yes, it is true, in the last 24 years, Nigeria has had, that is between 1999 to date, Nigeria has had 6 regular elections and several off-season elections. Okay? So, but despite these elections and despite the rules and regulation, we have so many electoral acts. I think we are now on number 10, if I haven't forgotten. Very soon we'll start working for number 11. But despite all this, and the fact that we have conducted 6 elections, we have conducted several, 6 regular elections and several off-season elections, yet if we look at it in reality, elections are mere ritual exercise. They are mere ritual exercise because the Constitution says that nobody will hold public office until he or she is elected. So instead of having election that reflects the wishes of the people, we end up having elections that are mere means of fostering unaccountable people in the office. Okay? It is also a means of, which makes it so ridiculous that people, whether we like them or not, they will still go as our own representative. Okay? We disenfranchise a large chunk of Nigerians by, you know, monetizing or putting monetary this in terms of election. Take, for example, the last election that happened. From it, the youth, that is what is known as not too young to run, okay? But the youth, if you look at them, most of them, even those who graduate are now seriously looking for a job. And they don't have any career, they are now trying to look this. Then the government says, yeah, it's not too young for them to run. But even the cost of a form is how many millions of naira? Where do you expect the youth to find that money to buy the cost, the form, talk less of the expenses of elections, which I think my colleague, the former Kansas chairman, will tell you how expensive it is. So that is how people are literally disenfranchised, how elections are made merely ritual exercise, so that every 4 years we just have it and we know the kind of people who are going to come, whether we like it or not. Now, the other element that I want to talk about is the issue of rule of law. Okay, I think the slide people will read it. Okay, also the Constitution is very clear that there has to be rule of law, justice, equity, and equality of all before the law. I said this is what the Constitution provides. However, upholding the sanctity of this principle is the bane of Nigerian democracy. From 1999 to date, the rule of law seems to apply to the downtrodden persons. Okay? Instead, we see a system of governance that is characterized by impunity. The previous speaker talked about corruption. Now, you see, corruption is perpetrated with impunity now. When you talk of it, people are now talking about not only billions, there are some cases of even trillions of naira that people will take, and nothing will happen to them. Also, there are countless and flagrant and willful disregard of court injunctions, whether between individual or between the state and the individual. So many things when the court, which is supposed to be the last resort, is give verdict or judgment, people accept it only when and if they wish to do that. Okay? Now, so I conclude by saying, from the foregoing, it is clear that since the inception of the post-republic in 1999 to date, Nigeria's democratic governance has failed to translate into governance. Okay? Now, in order for us to make it reflect that good governance, we have to look at 4 basic things. Wherever democracy is held as successful, there are 4 things which make it work. One is the issue of constitutionalism. That is, having a dynamic constitution that reflects the wishes of the people. Number 2 is having visionary leaders who have vision and mission, and who are selfless in terms of serving their nation and serving their people. 3 we must have strong and viable institutions. One of the problems that we have is that personalities are more powerful than institutions, okay? Once a person becomes a leader, he subjects the institution to his own whims and caprices. For example, the executive, anyhow the executive wants, whether the legislature, take it the legislature, political party, bureaucracy, whatever, it is subjected to him because it is like his own personal issue. And then the last element is we need, and there must be, a politically conscious electorate, okay? These three elements, these four elements are what make government to be, are what led to good governance. So based on this, I made 3 or 4 suggestions. Number 1, if we are to improve on good governance in Nigeria, there is need for leadership reorientation, okay? I argue somewhere that the extent to which democracy works, survives, and meets the people's aspiration is largely a function of inspiring, committed, enthusiastic leadership that is willing to provide responsible and responsive leadership, meaning a leadership that is working in the interest of the people. Now, in order to get this reorientation, I highlighted so many things. 1, there is need for the leadership to rededicate itself to the service of the people. 2, there is need for the leadership to imbibe the ethos and ethics of leadership qualities. And there is also the need for leaders to avail themselves with modern technique of leadership. Quickly. Now, the other element is constitutionalism or legal and constitutional reform. I say one of the bases of good leadership or good governance is constitutionalism. Now, there is need for Nigeria now to take certain constitutional measures in order to improve the quality of governance in Nigeria. And what I said is that we give lip service, the battery is low, we give lip service to the issue of good governance. So in order for us to make it work, there is need to give it constitutional and legal backing. So I just argue that there is need, for example, to make it as part of the fundamental human rights of Nigeria. So if we make good governance as part of the fundamental human rights of Nigeria, it means that we, the electorate, will have the power and the right to challenge bad leadership in court. But now with this issue of immunity and other things, you know, you cannot do it unless and until you have that constitutional and legal changes. Okay? So that is what I said about it. And the third recommendation that I made is that there is need to institutionalize, for institutionalization, meaning there is need to strengthen and the capability and the capacity as well as the viability of institutions, okay? Because that will ensure effective service delivery, and that one will check authoritarian tendencies. Because where you have, for example, the institutions, whether governmental or non-governmental, are very weak, and individuals are more powerful, you are subjecting yourself to arbitrary rule because there are no mechanism to check excesses and abuses of power. And then the last thing that I mentioned is in terms of public reorientation. Okay, I say there should be civic and political education in order to raise the consciousness of the people. I keep on saying political consciousness. When we are talking of a political consciousness of a person, we are talking of at least 3 elements in that person. 1, he is politically aware. meaning he knows what is about politics and so on. Unlike what we are having now, where people think politics is to go into media, abuse everything and everybody, but that is not the element. So awareness is one. Secondly, there is also the need for the person to participate. If you are aware, but you are apathetic in terms of what is politics, you are not politically conscious. And then the third element is the person must have a sense of efficacy, that he has a belief and conviction that his participation will matter. Not the way we think we just go to election like that, but we have a conviction that what I say, what I do will eventually count. Thank you very much.